Why run?
Why run? Because I want to make a difference in the city of Grand Rapids. And having worked 13 years in Grand Rapids City Hall, I saw a lot of what was really going on behind the scenes, and there are a lot of things that I would like to see changed on behalf of my neighbors and my neighborhood. And so I'm running because I want to make a difference, and I want to bring my experience, my education, and my qualifications to bear on behalf of the First Ward.
Can you get specific of what you learned, or even generalize what you think needs to be changed or addressed?
Sure, I'll give it my best shot. When I was city attorney for 8 years in City Hall, one of the things that I did, or one of my responsibilities, was to help train new city commissioners as they came into City Hall without any experience, having been sent there by the voters. And what I saw was that it would take at least a year, sometimes two, really, for a new city commissioner with no experience to get their feet under them, to learn city government, to understand who to go to fix problems for voters. And I believe that I can bring my experience to bear so I can hit the ground running on day one. I don't need 2 years of on-the-job training. Some of the things that I saw as a city employee that I would like to see changed as a voter, as a taxpayer. First, I'd like to see fiscal responsibility be a focus. That would be a focus of mine if I were elected. I think Commissioner Schaefer, whose seat we're looking to fill here, he's term limited, he can't run again, has done a good job of being a voice for fiscal responsibility, but because he's leaving, we need someone to be that voice once he's gone. I think I would say that I disagree very much with some of the financial decisions the City of Grand Rapids, the City Commission, has made in the past year and a half. I see things like spending $100,000 on a feasibility study for a bike share program that would only benefit downtown. I think that's really a wasteful thing. And I don't like to see my tax dollars spent on things like that, and I don't think my neighbors do either. During my time walking around talking to a lot of my neighbors, hitting doors in the election campaign this summer, I found that bike lanes, for example, are really very unpopular on the west side. At least not bike lanes themselves, but prioritizing bike lanes over other things. Like, for example, the condition of the roadbed itself and making it safe for vehicles to drive. So I think there's a lot of frustration on the part of the voters with regard to the priorities that the City Commission has set. And I would like to see more of a focus on the core functions of government. I think that the City Commission right now is engaged in a lot of liberal causes that really aren't the core functions that the city should be pursuing. So I would like to be a voice to bring that up and make that part of the conversation at the City Commission table, to talk about how we should be focusing on core services.
Let's talk a little bit bigger picture. What are some of the challenges, the biggest challenges you see facing the city? You talked about some of the things you're interested in. Are there other bigger picture items that you have some concerns with?
Sure, there's quite a few. One of them would be the discussion that's been going on in our city about policing and about police and community relations. I'm very much a strong supporter of the Grand Rapids Police Department and the police officers who work so hard and put their lives on the line really every day to keep the rest of us safe. I think, unfortunately, the City Commission really seems to be attacking the police department instead of supporting the police department. And I would be a strong supporter of law enforcement, and in particular the men and women of the Grand Rapids Police Department. They're very highly trained, very highly educated, very professional people. They're not racist, despite what the City Commission tries to say in public. They really do a very good job. But they have a very dangerous, very tough job. They're working in a situation where in the city of Grand Rapids, we really have an epidemic of gun violence in certain portions of our community. The police department didn't create that, but they have to deal with that. If we live in a city where a paralyzed man sitting in a wheelchair on the front steps of a church is executed in broad daylight, that's a problem. And we need some solutions to those problems. And the solution isn't telling the police department that they can't engage with certain groups of citizens, or that they can't draw their firearm when they're shot at, or when they're threatened, or when they believe a suspect has a gun. I live on the near west side, not up at the top of the hill, but at the bottom of the hill, in the First Ward on the west side. And I hear gunshots from my house. My kids hear gunshots in the middle of the night from my house. And so public safety is a real issue in Grand Rapids in a lot of our neighborhoods. And I would be a voice to work on that issue. When I started working at the city in 2002, we had twice as many police officers on the streets as we do now. That drawdown in force has not made us safer. It's made us a less safe community. And so I would support more police officers on our streets because I think that would make us safer.
You say some on the commission suggest that GRPD is racist. Can you give an example of that?
Well, the example would be the discussion that was had when the African American youths were detained after the Kroc Center riot that occurred. You know, you had a couple of police officers responding to a very large fight with a very large number of individuals, and they had a witness who was an African American witness who said they saw a group of juveniles with a gun. You know, and the police department was criticized for responding as if one of the juveniles had a gun. That was the information they were given by a credible witness. That was the information they had to act upon. But they were very much criticized for how they acted. And in my opinion, the police department not only did nothing wrong in that incident, they did everything right in that incident. Everyone went home safe, and they thoroughly investigated whether or not a group of juveniles had a gun. So I think that's one example of how I think the police department was criticized by city commissioners. There have been other examples as well, but that's one that's very recent.
So, anytime a former city employee runs for an elected office, there are going to be those who say that person may have an axe to grind. Have you heard that, and how do you answer that criticism?
I really haven't heard that. Going door to door, I think people have been impressed by my experience and my knowledge of what really goes on in City Hall on a day-to-day basis. If you think about it, I've attended already 8 years of city commission meetings, sitting on the dais next to the mayor. So I have already more years of experience than the 4 least senior city commissioners combined. I already have as many meetings under my belt as a term-limited city commissioner. So I already know what the city commission's business is. I know what their agenda items look like. I know what they're asked to consider. And I have that perspective that I will bring with me even from the very first day.
Got an open mic, open camera.
Sure.
Tell folks why they should vote for you.
Well, I think the people of the First Ward should vote for me in part because I'm a very long-time First Ward resident. I've lived in the First Ward for 18 years. I'm not a newcomer to the city. I'm not a newcomer to the First Ward. I have 13 years of experience working in City Hall, 8 years as city attorney, so I'm very well versed with all the issues that the city faces. I'm a strong supporter of law enforcement. I believe in fiscal responsibility. And those are issues that I'm always hearing about from my neighbors that I don't think get enough of a voice on the Grand Rapids City Commission.